Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land. It is once again that time of the week. What time of the week is it? It's that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We talk about what the mainstream media is not. And we generally call the establishment out on its BS. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Now, as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM WIDR Kalamazoo or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may in fact turn out to be. So my co-hosts are going to be joining me pretty soon. Before that, and before we dig into a plethora of very important stories about the local and national level, let's talk a little bit about an important local story. It's it's short but informative, and I did want the listening audience to hear this. There's not going to be, this one doesn't have a whole lot of political discussion around it. It's more just some important information that I wanted my listenership to know. And it's very important for those of you out there who are looking perhaps interested in treating your medical issue with marijuana. There's been some changes for the better about who kind of falls under the medical marijuana umbrella. The headline of the article, cerebral palsy can now be treated with medical marijuana in Michigan. And this is updated today around 10:50 a.m. Written by Amy Bloachini, I think is how you pronounce it. And Amy, if you somehow listen to this at any point and I slaughtered your last name, my bad. So go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and read from the article a little bit here. People with cerebral palsy in Michigan will now be able to treat their condition with medical marijuana. The state's Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs agreed this week to add cerebral palsy to a list of debilitating medical conditions approved for treatment with medical marijuana. That brings the list of conditions that qualify patients for a medical marijuana card to 28. State officials also decided to deny a request to have chronic aggressive behavior included on the list, which actually I don't think I am with that at all. Okay, actually, I said I wasn't going to editorialize on this at all, but I guess there is something I did want to talk about. So, without discrediting this entirely, there are many mental health and debilitative mental health conditions, neurological conditions that are allowed to be treated with marijuana. Honestly, though, I think there have been other states that specifically prescribe medical marijuana for anxiety or, explosive aggression disorders. In my experience as a mental health professional, these prove to be very effective treatments and don't have a lot of the dangerous side effects that certain pharmaceuticals have. Now, of course, that is not to put every single condition on that list. Marijuana is not... I think that some people would have this idea that marijuana is just this wonder drug that cures everything from headache to cancer to lack of appetite. But keep in mind there are some conditions that actually do require pharmacological assistance above and beyond what simply can be treated with marijuana. So anyway, enough of my going off the beaten path there. Let me talk, this is just the list here of the conditions that can be treated with medical marijuana. So all y'all out there, if you're interested in getting a medical card, here's your cheat sheet. Get a notebook ready. In the state of Michigan, you can get a medical marijuana card for the following conditions. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, otherwise known as AIDS, Alzheimer's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, arthritis, autism, cancer, chronic pain, colitis, Crohn's disease, glaucoma, hepatitis C, inflammatory bowel disease, nail patella, obsessive compulsive disorder, Parkinson's, positive status for immunodeficiency virus, HIV, post-traumatic stress disorder, rheumatoid arthritis, spinal cord injury, Tourette syndrome. Excuse me, just a sec here. So, sorry. Tourette syndrome, I believe, where was I? Spinal cord injury, ulcerative colitis, a chronic or debilitating disease or medical condition, or its treatment that produces one or more of the following: cachexia or wasting syndrome, severe and chronic pain, severe nausea, seizures, including but not limited to those characteristic of epilepsy, and severe and persistent muscle spasms, including but not limited to those characteristic of multiple sclerosis. So, that was a nice little more you know type of segment. I'm going to go let my co-host in right quick. We will be right back. Hello, everyone. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. So, again, if you need to look at that list again, figure out your business with medical marijuana, it is on the MLive website. Again, headline of that article, cerebral palsy can now be treated with medical marijuana in Michigan, and it has a full list of all the conditions on which you can get prescribed medical marijuana. So at this moment, we're now joined by our good friend Lawrence.
Yo, what up?
Yeah, here to bring the heat and the fire and the radical critique. I think you mentioned something you wanted to bring up, another updates about one of our...
There's a couple stories that I wanted to talk about. I just want to say tomorrow the education board is going to have the education board is going to have their meeting, and if I'm going by what some people in the community said about the last meeting. There was some fire. There was some heat in the room, and
is this referring to the school board session that was They wanted to make it a closed meeting, which was illegal.
Yeah. They wanted to make it a closed meeting, but it ended up being public. And I saw some of the stuff, and there's going to be one tomorrow. And I heard there's going to be some drama tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. Like it's going to be a conversation that we need to have in our community. And the fact that the school board wants to have conversations in secret, forgetting the fact that we voted for them to be there, is a problem. It's a problem. There's a couple things, man. I want to get Jermaine Jackson on here. I want to get a couple people from the school board on our show so we can go in depth about what is and is not being done.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because, like, we've had Tandy on the show before. Tandy Moore, one of the current members of our Kalamazoo school board, just got in last November. She's the one who called or brought this to the public's attention, kind of walked out of this closed door meeting. And honestly, even the article in MLive didn't really. One of the reasons I didn't really report on this when it first happened is it didn't shed a light on the context of particularly what that meeting was actually supposed to be about. But I agree. I would like to have them on and maybe talk about it more in depth. And again, that is tomorrow over at the Kalamazoo Public Schools Administration Building. It's right off Howard. So make it on down there, and keep an eye on our elected officials, folks.
That was that story, and the other story that I wanted to talk about was a recent story. Vice News did a piece about the anti-BDS laws that are going on in the states, and for those who are not informed, half of our country have proposed or have passed some of these measures, which is an actual attack on free speech. To get a federal contract. So let's say if you work at a newspaper and you get and you work on advertisements, and you get advertisements as a part of your revenue, you have to sign a loyalty pledge to Israel and say that you will not support boycotts, divestments, and sanctions of Israel. If you are a federal contractor, you work at a factory. If you're a federal contractor and you work as a public school teacher, or like the one in Texas, there are multiple public officials that, if they want to get contracts from the government, or grants or contracts or whatever, they have to sign a loyalty pledge. I shared this story on my Facebook page. Vice News was the one that did it. I shared the story on my Facebook page. If you actually care about free speech, this should piss you off, no matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, or something in between. Because when the president's saying mean things about CNN and Fox News, when he's just calling them names and calling them fake news, that's horrible. That's bad optics, but that's not an attack on free speech. Saying that the government will not do business with you because you are not signing an oath of loyalty to another country is an attack on free speech. Because think about this, folks. Ilhan Omar had hell the last 3-4 weeks, right?
Oh, man. Yeah.
She had hell for the last 3 weeks. Why? Because she said money corrupts politics, and that the Israel lobby, AIPAC, who's pushing these bills, by the way, AIPAC and other groups are pushing these bills, that they are infecting people's... They're not infecting. They are using their money and policy. They're using money to push policy. So now it's going to affect that in half the countries, including Michigan, by the way, have proposed or passed bills like this. Imagine if it wasn't Israel that they were asking a loyalty pledge from. Imagine if the United States said, you know what, we need you to sign a loyalty pledge to Saudi Arabia. We need you to sign a loyalty pledge to...
Well, no, I mean, Saudi Arabia, you don't sign a pledge, you like stand around a magic glowing orb and then, you know...
right. But that's my point. I'm like, imagine if they were like, you know, if you want to do boycotts, divestments, or sanctions of South Africa, you know, you can't do business with the American government if you support the sanctions in South Africa when they had apartheid.
You know, something I'd say too, like here's like a silver lining to, you know, the recent dogpiling on Ilhan and how, you know, our relationship with Israel has really been in the news.
They reinforced her point. They basically they have basically justified what she said, and what she said wasn't being anti-Semitic. What she said was the most blatantly honest thing in the world. And I'm actually upset with Ilhan because she said another blatantly honest thing in the world, and then she started to walk it back, which will be later in the show.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. But you know, slay queen as it were. But anyway, so it's like one of the things that's really you know, kind of silver lining to this is it's really shown how ridiculous pairing anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel is in a way that's penetrated the mainstream discourse in a way that I have very rarely seen. Actually, it was funny on the way to work this morning. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Intercepted, Jeremy Scahill, and he was interviewing the cartoonist who recently dunked on Meghan McCain. I don't know if y'all caught that particular news story.
Well, who doesn't dunk on Meghan McCain?
Well, yeah.
I missed that level of shade.
So long story short, Meghan McCain went on The View
and
last
cried
week
about
with her crocodile tears, and a Jewish cartoonist.
People getting health care.
Yeah. So a Jewish cartoonist made a satirical comic with her in his style, where she looks kind of just like the sad blob, and she's surrounded by like all this like Jewish kitsch, and like the joke is like he's making fun of this Gentile woman for like basically appropriating you know, the Jewish trauma in order to silence people like Ilhan Omar. And then she responded on Twitter, again, great example of when you when you play yourself. She was talking, this is the most anti-Semitic cartoon I have ever seen.
It's like when I quote the former Prime Minister of Israel when he said that what was going on the Gaza Strip was akin to a genocide, not to a genocide, akin to apartheid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Am I being anti-Semitic by quoting the former Prime Minister of Israel? Like it literally makes no sense when. Okay, let's be clear, because I want to be fair. Absolutely fair. There are old anti-Semitic tropes when it comes to money and Jewish people.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
That is a thing. We cannot deny that a thing is a thing. That's real.
And you know, conspiracies hitherto that drive actual anti-Semitic violence.
But this is my point. Saying, okay, you cannot use the Jews are controlling everything. You know, the Jews controlling everything. That's anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. But stating a fact like a lobbying group is using money to push policy that positively affects Israel while not addressing the atrocities that they are doing is part of the problem.
I mean, if anything, like, you know, the reason like the spotlight's been put on AIPAC, and you know the comparison to lobbyists or lobbies like the NRA is very apt, because they essentially are paying off people in Congress to ignore their own atrocities, their own acts of genocide against the Palestinian people. You know, in a similar way that like the NRA basically pays politicians to not deal with the gun crisis.
This is a thing, like with both I'm on. Hello. Hello.
Oh yeah,
Hello.
Nora.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Hold on. Did a wild Nora appear?
Hey. Hi, I'm Nora. So it's not like we don't see these things happen. Like, sure, it is also, you know, kind of in line with those same tropes that we've been talking about, but like these are things that have objectively happened. Like if you bother to look into like FEC filings of which politician's getting money from where, like yeah, AIPAC's pouring money all over Congress, just like the NRA and the rest. So
here's the thing. The only reason why it's being done is because one of cynical identity politics. So you have it's cynical identity politics. I'm going to use this black Muslim woman to shut down her image, to shut down any critique of what Israel has done. And when you do that, you give credence to actual anti-Semites like our president, who has retweeted literally neo-Nazi propaganda. You have Congress people and congressmen, men and women who have, and also people like Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain's husband correct me if I'm wrong. Meghan McCain's husband is a part of the founder, the magazine or whatever that tweeted out Jewish girls. Is something along the effect. I'm paraphrasing that Jewish girls are whiny little babies or something. It was something ridiculous. Meghan McCain's husband is I think the creator of the Foundry, or is some magazine that says something absolutely outrageous and ridiculous about Jewish people. The only reason why I know this is because I was watching the Majority Report and they talked about it and how Meghan McCain has no leg to stand on when it comes to talking about what is truly anti-Semitic or not. Also, because she, you know, supports the right wing and supported our president, and our president said that there was literally good people on both sides when it came to neo-Nazis, shouting out Jews will not replace us. Like, come on, son. Come on.
Well, I mean,
also her dad's a huge warmonger.
It really does expose like the hypocrisy, though. Like when you literally have quotes from our current unfortunate current president, literally like going on and making jokes in front of Jewish people about how it's like, but you guys are good with business, aren't you?
No, you got yeah. When he went to the conservative Jewish conference and said, hey, you guys like to renegotiate contracts. Like he literally said that in front of Jewish people. It's like it's like bruh, Megan, you supported that guy. Like, I'm not trying to hear it.
Trump also barely condemned like the mass shooting in Pittsburgh, was it?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
No, you wanna know what's anti-Semitic? Meghan McCain's I think is friends with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, the day after said shooting, said that it was left-wing anti-Semitism that's a rise in America. The day after that synagogue shooting. Like, come on, son. Get your life together. like the thing that pissed me off about this whole story is that, one, how many Americans do not understand that a loyalty pledge, and again, Ilhan Omar said that she was asked to do a loyalty pledge when she was supposed to be a part of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
And I just want to interject real quickly. Like, when we say loyalty pledge, we're not hyperbolizing or saying like, oh, it's like a loyalty pledge. Like, you know, for example, like that teacher from Texas, it's literally written into the contract that, like, you know, you have to pledge not to criticize Israel.
Yeah, you will not support boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Forgetting the fact that America was founded after white people stole Native American lands on boycotts of Great Britain. Of boycotts of, you know, the whole Boston Tea Party thing. Does anybody forget?
There were a bunch of hoodlums. They engaged in property destruction and violence.
I think some of them were with Antifa.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, our entire country rebelled on the whole thing of give me what was it?
Give me liberty,
give me
death.
Right.
Free speech, right to boycott.
Right to boycott, right to free speech. This was what our country is based off of. Now our country has literally done a 180 and said, if you do not support the people who we tell you to support, we will not support you. And they're not doing, no, and I want everybody to understand this. They're not sanctioning other countries. They're literally sanctioning Americans, and that is and that literally is against not only freedom of speech, but also freedom of press, because a lot of press in our country are based on ads. A lot of those ads usually come from the government. So if the government's no longer giving out contracts to newspapers like the one in Arkansas or across the country, that also means that a lot of free speech news news organizations will literally be washed up or bought up by other mega corporations who have signed these loyalty pledges.
That's right.
So it is important. It's absolutely important that people who say they care about free speech, you intellectual dark web people, like you Ben Shapiro's and Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's definitely been talking about how he wants to be free speech. I'm gonna need for all of you suckers to get your life together and talk about this, because if you're not, then you are playing yourself. Because here's the thing, just like with Chelsea Manning, which I also wanted to talk about today, if you don't think this is not going to come after and bite us in the rear, or go after other news organizations like CNN, MSNBC, and all those, you haven't been paying attention.
Speaking of Chelsea Manning and freedom of the press, is that a topic we want to get onto?
Oh, it certainly is. Although I think it actually.
Talk about that since I got here.
Why don't we go ahead and go to a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how our damn government will not leave that poor woman alone.
It's not. It's not that, dog. We're talking about tax on free speech. This is a prime example of it.
Indeed. Oh, indeed. All right. When we come back, we will talk. Spend some amount of time talking about that. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
This is George W. Bush, and you're listening to 89.1 WIDR, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Kalamazoo. You know what you're listening to, Kalamazoo, Michigan, man. What are you, stupid?
It may not be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
WIDR's 2019 Battle of the Bands is supported by Rupert's Brew House. Rupert's is located on 773 West Michigan Avenue in Kalamazoo. Rupert's offers daily specials on food and drink as well as live entertainment weekly. To find out more information, you can visit rupertsbrewhouse.com or give them a call at 269-337-9911.
Hello, y'all. We're back. So let's go ahead and dive in. We've actually got a couple more stories about basically it seems like we've opened with a trio of stories about the precarity of modern journalism in America, and the second one is very near and dear to our hearts. One of the things we really gave props to, we think all the way back, oh gosh, like 2 years, we had like a what was it, like a recap show or a best and worst of the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And one of the big props we gave him is, one of the last things he did in office was pardon Chelsea Manning, who
even though he went after Chelsea Manning for like 10 years, he went after whistleblowers, and he used the Espionage Act more times than any other president before him. So we have to give that context.
We do.
But to also give him credit, he was like, what we did to Chelsea was wrong. Well, his name was Brian first, but then Chelsea. And it was like, what we did to Chelsea was wrong. We need to get them out because we messed up. And also, what they did was an act of journalism.
I just imagine, Joe Biden and Barack, one of the last, right before the election, they're like, we've created the most pervasive surveillance state in the history of the entire world. Looks like we've got the power to extrajudiciously kill just about anybody we want, but we are going to leave this to somebody responsible, right, Joe? And it's like, oh, yeah, of course. And then, of course, that very same apparatus ended up getting handed down to the Psycho Clown game show host, who is currently president.
Dog, let's keep it real, man. Like, George Bush and President Trump George Bush and President Obama laid a lot of groundwork for the authoritarian-in-chief to do what he does because he can cite precedent. Here's the problem with a lot of it. This is another thing that I gotta give the Obama administration props for, because they also wanted to go after WikiLeaks, and they also wanted to jail or drone strike Julian Assange. Hillary Clinton actually talked about droning Julian Assange.
At first it's a joke, but then it's a serious discussion. It was leaked in one of the emails.
Yeah. So the problem here is that even the Obama administration was like, bruh, if we do this, then that means we will also have to arrest everyone at the Washington Post, everyone at the New York Times for doing journalism.
Yes.
To give further context, so first off, the reason why Chelsea Manning is going to jail now is because there is one of those FISA, grand jury FISA courts, which is, by the way, not a public court in our federal security state system. They can do all sorts of decisions in secret, which is, completely goes against having a court in the first place. But anyways, so she was forced to testify about WikiLeaks, so the U.S. could get more grounds to, kidnap Julian Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy and either
make an example of him.
Yep, that's the idea, and she wasn't gonna play along with her game. Now, what am I saying? Okay, so I'm tripping over my words right now. I got this.
Okay, so Chelsea Manning is, basically she's in prison because she's refusing to testify to this court.
What she basically said was that I've given y'all all the information that I had before. What they want is they want from her the same thing that Meghan McCain wanted from Tulsi Gabbard when Tulsi Gabbard was on the show and was like, won't you condemn the dude from Syria, and why won't you condemn him? Aren't you gonna say it? And that's basically what they want from Chelsea. Why don't you tell us that Julian Assange gave you the information? Wasn't he acting as a foreign operative? Why don't you say that to us in this courtroom? And she's basically saying, I told y'all everything that I know. How about y'all stop tripping? And you know what? I don't trust any of y'all anyway. I've told y'all all my information. I plead the fifth. I'm done. And because of it, they're like, you're not going to cooperate with us? you're gonna go back to jail.
Subpoena. Bam.
Yeah, you're going back to jail until you feel like cooperating with us, and that's the problem that I'm having with it. Because one, Chelsea Manning's a hero. Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden are heroes. Julian Assange messed up. He messed up because of the fact that he thought Trump would be not as bad as Hillary, and he also dropped the WikiLeaks dump. And dump is a funny word, and I'm being a kid. I'm sorry, I'm being a kid. But they did the email drop 2 days after the Access Hollywood tape dropped. Mm-hmm. So they knew. He knew good and well. WikiLeaks knew good and well what was going on. Here's the problem with that I have a problem with. That doesn't mean that what they are doing as a journalist outlet is wrong. And that also doesn't mean that you are allowed to break our First Amendment rights and international rights because international law, because
and the Fifth Amendment rights.
Right. Yeah. Because a journalist did their job and showed that you're a corrupt piece of garbage. And for those that do not remember why Chelsea Manning went to jail in the first place, back in 2010, she gave documents and emails and videos of our soldiers committing war crimes, of our soldiers shooting civilians and journalists and first responders, and then not only laughing about it, but then when first responders came to help the civilians that they shot, they turned around and double tapped them. And for those that do not know what a double tap is, that means you kill everyone who's around, wait for the first responders to come, and then you kill the first responders.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of other really shocking things that she revealed about both the U.S. federal government and their allies in the Middle East during that leak as well. But the Apache helicopter was far and away the most famous of those. And there was child sex slaves that was also a part of the Saudi Arabia, not Saudi Arabia, but some of our Arab allies that was also being leaked during that time. But here's the problem. It led to the Arab Spring in part.
But here's also the problem. New York Times, Democracy Now!, RT America, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they all ran with that story as well. So if you are going to lock up WikiLeaks for committing the act of journalism, does anyone in this room believe that the man who said, I want to lock up journalists, or I want to take away libel laws so we can lock up journalists, will not do this? Now, that's the point that I don't think certain Americans are not getting. President Bush, with the Patriot Act, stomped all over our First Amendment rights and stomped all over our Constitution. President Obama continued it by using the Espionage Act more times than any other president before him. And with that precedent, our numbnuts in chief will use the power that has happened before him to push that door even open even farther. And if you don't think that's not going to happen, you have not been paying attention.
Well, I'd say the biggest irony, really tragic irony with what's going on with both WikiLeaks and Chelsea Manning is, you have a liberal media establishment that, for all intents and purposes, save some more independent outlets like Democracy Now!, The Real News, and RT America, who have been pushing what's this miscarriage of justice with Chelsea Manning. Many of them couldn't care less. When the fact of the matter is, the reason that the Trump administration is emboldened to go after WikiLeaks is they don't have those same considerations that the Obama administration had. It's like, well, if you set that precedent, then you'd also have to go after the New York Times, the Washington Post, which...
That's specifically why the Obama administration didn't go after them.
So what's ironic is the very same newspapers and media establishment that are looking at, the Trump administration setting their sights on Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and are like, yes, Orange One, drag him, are also going to be the very first outlets that if they do end up prosecuting Assange with this precedent, they will, who's the Trump administration going to go after next? Maybe it's the organizations that he tweets about incessantly and calls fake news.
I mean, dog, come on now. He kicked like we do you remember? Do we remember the news storm when he kicked out Jim Acosta? Do we not remember the news storm when Jose Ramos got kicked out? Do we not remember the whole cycle of BS that that even Fox News was like, bro, you kicked out Jorge Ramos and Jim Acosta. You're going too far. Even Fox News realized that they were going too far, and it's Fox News.
Yeah.
like to one piss on an American hero who's a soldier, which Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning were, is hypocrisy 101. Two, not defending Julian Assange and WikiLeaks as journalists who have done nothing but the act of journalism is strike two. The next part is seeing the ramifications of what will happen next when they do prosecute Julian Assange under the Espionage Act. Because do you think they're going to stop there? If you think that they're going to stop there, you're a part of that strike three because you're naive.
All those are very true. And I think with the treatment of Julian Assange more specifically, it's not only a failure of the US government, it's also a failure of the UK government, of the Ecuadorian government, of the Australian government even. He's originally an Australian citizen.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, of course, the US, UK, and Australia are all like, are known to work together on their intelligence apparatus. So of course, like, you'd expect that. But like, you might remember that the US government, I think specifically Mike Pence, laid some pressure onto one of the leaders of Ecuador to, basically seal him off. And now he's like sort of living in solitary confinement within that embassy. But as for Chelsea and her detainment now, like, I'm not sure if she's back to solitary confinement again. I'm also fairly uncertain that she's going to be getting the health care that she needs. Yeah, be on the lookout for that. She is going, the prison that she's going to in Virginia is right next to DC. In fact, it's the same town that has the Pentagon and the DC International Airport. So yeah, so she's going to be right there in the lion's den with all sorts of, like, I guess, other horrible national criminals. It's where Paul Manafort is also going, presumably for a shorter amount of time, which shows you just who and how much the criminal justice system targets. And something else I want to talk about regarding this is that, like, the prison system is already really horrible for trans people in general. And although, like, we already do have, like, a lot of people writing her letters, sending her commissary money, paying into her legal support fund, like, it's still not going to be a good time. That much is for certain. So if you want to support Chelsea Manning, there's a couple ways. You can follow at Resists Chelsea on Twitter. You can search her under Chelsea Resist. This is the best way to keep track of how she's doing, how the fundraiser is going, what's going on with the legal process. She currently has 4 lawyers. Her legal fund has reached just under $40,000 and only in a really short amount of time too. And they're making their goal $150. They give you instructions on how to, like, write letters to her, how to send her commissary money, which you have to do through a money order. And there's also this album on Bandcamp that a lot of artists have come together that supports the.
Oh, I did not know about this.
Yeah, it's a Hugs for Chelsea in Bandcamp.com. You can buy the album for about $25, and it's got 39 tracks on it from all sorts of indie artists on Bandcamp.
Here's the other thing that I just want to. You brought up such a good point, and I want to piggyback off of it. Remember, folks, Paul Manafort got 47 months? He got less than 5 years. He got almost 4. He got less than 5 years. Eric Gardner, if I remember correctly, was selling loose cigarettes. He got executed. Chelsea Manning told the truth and got 10 years. She was in prison from 2010 to 2007 to 2016.
Her original sentence, I believe, was something like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, her original,
most of it in solitary.
Her original sentence was like 37. Was like, I think, 37 years, if I remember correctly. Edward Snowden had the best tweet about that, and I shared it on my Facebook page. Depending on how close you are to power, will determine how the system treats you. And that goes from rich parents buying their kids into expensive schools, which is a story that we have to talk about. It goes to Paul Manafort, who was a foreign agent who stole money from Americans. And he got less than 5 years. I know people who are in jail for weed right now, and they're doing 10. Like, are you kidding me? They're in jail for like 5 to 10.
Well, I mean, that's the calculus of national security right there, because they view Chelsea Manning as a larger threat than somebody who actually worked against the United States with a foreign power, because, what Manafort did was, in their eyes, just kind of like this typical power broking and corruption that happens in the Washington elite, and among those members of the so-called deep state. But Chelsea Manning, on the other hand, actually exposed a very uncomfortable fact about American empire that they did not take too kindly to. They do not want people knowing that we had military personnel during, let's say, during the Afghanistan war is still going on, but in the early part of the Afghanistan war that just massacred civilians. It's not a good look, and what the very tenuous glue that holds the popsicles together of U.S. empire is this idea that we are on the morally right side of history.
We're the good guys.
Yeah, we are the benign imperialists that are going around spreading happiness and cotton candy and democracy all over the world.
Okay.
Not
Were the
very much
Brits also
the case.
doing that back in the day?
Of course, they were spreading tea, love.
Yeah, they told everybody how great the empire was as they were robbing and pillaging the people, and then they were surprised when people started showing up to see how great the empire was. Okay, just my last thoughts on this story, because I definitely want to rip into Joe Biden, because he's now planning on running. And
did he officially announce?
He hasn't. He said at a firefighters conference, thank you for this energy that y'all are giving me. Y'all might want to save some for next week, because I'm gonna need it. And so, yeah. But just to put this pin on this point, intellectual dark web. Yo, Tucker Carlson. Yo, all you free speech advocates. This is an attack on free speech. Wakey. We ain't got time for you to be sleeping on. I don't have time for you to be angry and arguing, Steven Crowder. I don't need you arguing with college students. I need you talking about this. Because if you don't think that they're not going to come for you, you are sadly mistaken.
They already weren't talking about Julian Assange, those same, so free speech nerd figureheads. I wouldn't count on it. Also, I agree with you. Joe Biden is a son of a bad word. And he, I don't know if y'all heard, but
son of a female dog.
Yeah, exactly. So, we probably, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show, but he did, give a speech in Benton Harbor promoting Fred Upton as a bipartisan leader. And
I've been waiting to tear into him about that. The episode after he announces, we're going to talk about that in depth and be like, this is why nobody from this district should vote for his wrinkly ass.
No kidding.
He threw us under the bus.
It's not just that. His policy on integration and busing when it comes to education.
Speaking of buses,
I don't know if y'all heard the audio that came out. Now let me give y'all some context. This was back during the 70s. All right, this is back during 70, I think around 73, 74. So Joe Biden, who was the 6th youngest person to ever be in the Senate or be in our body politics, was just entering his second, maybe third year as a congressperson, right? Then this young man said some very discouraging and just misinformed statements when it came to education. Wasn't talking about how we need to put more funding in public education. It wasn't talking about how we need to make sure that school buses are able to get in everybody's neighborhoods. It wasn't talking about how we need to bring the country together to make sure that everybody is rises. He wasn't talking about trying to expand the GI Bill to just all Americans in general, so everybody could uplift our economy while being better educated and being better set to be in the workforce. No, he was saying that it was a bad idea to put white kids from privileged households that go to private or well-off schools, and to go and busing them into lower, less funded schools, or having black kids that are in those lower, less funded schools going to the better white suburban schools, and saying that one, it was racist. Because the only way that your black child will be educated is if he's by my white child. But he also said, and I'm also paraphrasing / quoting, is that you are going to dumb down the white children by putting them in a slower track school, and that busing these kids into these neighborhoods by either taking the white kids to the black schools or the black kids to the white schools is a horrible idea. He said that as a freshman senator, and there's a good chance that he would not have been reelected if he said it back then. Because let's keep it real, it was during the early 70s. There was still a lot of racist white people, and there's still a lot of white people today. When it comes to education, they're like, hey, I want integration and I want diversity, just not with my kids. My kids are going to private schools or charter schools. If they are going to public schools, then let them rot in what they're doing. And we're not dealing with the issue of how the schools are being funded, which is usually through housing, or are the schools going to be getting more grants from the government. We're not talking about how to actually fix the problem. We're just saying, hey, if you're suffering, then you're just suffering. So we're doing segregation again, but it's not by the color of your skin, it's by your address. And we've done it systematically because of redlining. This is the problem. Joe Biden's not approaching that. And a Biden spokesperson came out and talked about it last week, saying that he still supports the busing that he said back in 1974, which is he's anti-integration and busing for kids.
Well, that's right from the dog whistle Republican playbook. Literally, oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the guy. He's got this quote. He was like one of the main architects of this strategy that, really like Nixon deployed. And, every Republican president since, to some degree or another, has really, deployed in their presidential campaigns, whether we're talking about Reagan and welfare moms.
Oh, yeah. And also, Reagan was racist. I'm sorry.
This whole thing.
Oh, yeah. All you conservatives who need a safe space from AOC calling out Reagan being racist. Yeah, he was racist.
Man, Reagan was like he was Trump before Trump. Okay?
Dog, was. No, here's the thing. And you want to know a fantastic projection. I know we're going to get back to Joe Biden. A fantastic projection. There's this theory that's going out from the conservatives saying that AOC is an actor. She's not really a congressperson. She's an actor. You want to know why this conspiracy theory is going on, folks? Because Reagan was an actor. It's projection 101. It's the same way. It's the same way when if you're in a relationship and someone's cheating, they expect the other person is cheating. Why? Because they're cheating. It's projection.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that. It's like you ascribe weird explanations to things you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like I remember a great quote about like the kernel of the whole like George Soros pays all the protesters line. It's like, think about the headspace you need to be in that. It's like you can't conceive of people who just care about something so much that they go out there in their own time and do something about it. And, you know,
it was the same thing with again projection. You want to know why? Because Donald Trump's supporters in his first rally were paid supporters.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. And like to the degree to which a lot of the Tea Party movement was astroturfed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like a lot of projection in there. It's like, and it's funny to think it's like the people who were involved in Tea Party, like they were literally like Koch brothers think tanks and stuff, like paying people to organize rallies and show up and inflate numbers and recruit, you know. Whereas like stuff like Occupy is just a leftists are mad and decided to like go to a park and camp, or camp by the, you know, the river, you know, to prevent an oil pipeline. You know, these things are done out of passion and not because people are getting a paycheck. But
oh, dog.
Yeah.
No, but also, dog, like, okay, so but just to get back with Joe Biden, like, I know he's going to be planning on running, and we're going to do a whole breakdown of why Joe Biden sucks.
I honestly think he would be, he's like the one candidate they got who would definitely lose to Donald Trump. And I've got reasons for thinking that. But
no. Here's the thing. When it comes to polling, the polling has not lied. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are both number 1 and number 2. Mostly because Joe Biden has massive name recognition. He has the Obama legacy behind him, and also the establishment loves him because he's been a corporate shill at times. Even though he's the second poorest person in the Congress, the first being the most poor is Bernie. Because of reasons. I mean, mostly because of small and running donations and not selling out as much. But let's also be clear. Joe Biden, we're going to go get deeper into these things. Joe Biden was for the 94 crime bill. He called it the Biden bill. He still stands by it today. He was for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. He basically, he has his legacy. When you look at his legacy by itself, like when it came to attacking President Bush, he was attacking President Bush from the right, from a neocon way. Like his foreign policy was absolutely horrendous. Everybody always talks about Anita Hill because he basically acted as an arm of Clarence Thomas when it came to his sexual misbehavior with sexual assault of Anita Hill.
All right, so
I'm making a quick list of the things off the top of my head.
You just gotta save the heat for when he actually makes the announcement, man.
No, I'm gonna say no. No. There's a lot more because there's a lot of stuff in Joe Biden's legacy that is not pretty. It is disastrous. Actually, there was a writer, Andrew Cockburn, did a piece. I don't know where he did this piece in. I'm trying to find where he did this piece in. The piece is titled Joe Biden's disastrous legislative legacy. His disastrous legislative legacy.
Oh yeah, man. I'll have to make sure to catch up with that because I don't even want to say he's got a skeleton in his closet. He's just got his closet is just top to bottom full of bones. There's just and probably more so than just about anybody else running, like just by volume, you know, like we've spoken about, you know, issues with other candidates like Kamala and her her history as a prosecutor, Cory Booker and his ties to Big Pharma. Joe Biden beats them all.
Joe Biden has a longer history that is just much more disastrous. If you want to see the breakdown of it, please go to Democracy Now! On YouTube and look it up. It's like a 6-minute video, and then they have a part 2 of it. It is as bad as advertised. But I want to get to Tucker Carlson.
Okay, well,
let's take a break.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, talk a little bit about the latest mess that bow tie and wearing bozo got himself into.
My God.
This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
For your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the contact page.
Stay tuned for Wider's weekly RSO Spotlight on WIDR Kalamazoo.
Hello, my name is Kyle Petronio, and I am the president of Club Running at WMU, formerly known as Run Western, and RSO here on campus. Our goal is to encourage exercise through the sport of running as a positive social experience. We meet Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. at Canley Track. For more information, you can visit runwestern.weebly.com or check us out on Twitter, WMU Club Running, or Instagram at RunWestern.
This has been our weekly RSO Spotlight on WIDR Kalamazoo. For more information on how to spotlight your RSO, head to widrfm.org.
Hey everybody, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So we were just yelling about
I mean, let's get to Tucker.
Yeah.
Let's get to the white supremacist explaining person on Fox News, who is now the most popular show host on Fox News.
Okay, so you want to talk about Tucker Carlson?
Okay, so look, let's talk about, we talked about last week about how they're building a luxury hotel in Kalamazoo that's going to displace homeless people. So displacing people who don't have a home is asinine, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my God. We talked about that last week. I don't want to relitigate that, but that still bothered me this week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I do want to speak on the tragedy that did happen.
Yeah.
For those that saw it in the news or did not see it in the news, there was a incident at a plasma center in Kalamazoo. There was a young man, a young person who end up having a incident, and then end up getting shot and killed by the police. It was devastating to a lot of the community. It's still devastating to a lot of the community. It makes it difficult because, again, people are at plasma centers, one, because they want to help, because plasma is needed for hospitals, for blood transfusions and things of that nature, but also people go to plasma centers because they don't have any other way of making money. So let's keep it real on both fronts. As much as you're helping other Americans who need blood transfusions and things of that nature, other people are going to there to get, because they don't have, they are low on funds. You know what I'm saying? So so in many ways you have desperate people who are in need. And sometimes their need is not just financial, it's also mental.
Well, I do want to point out, so the individual involved, Brandon Stacy, was actually an employee at Biomat. It's funny, like for the better part of a year, I was going down to the plasma center myself. And when I first heard this story and, the details started coming through. So for those who don't know the specifics of the situation since yesterday, what we basically had was most certainly a suicide by cop type of situation where, Brandon came into his place of employment with a gun. I think he literally asked them to call the police and then got into a shootout with the officers, likely with the intent of not walking out of that building. I'll throw it back to you in a second, Lawrence, because I know you've got a little bit more to say about it. What I'll say about it is this. I've had a lot of conversations lately about, if you ever studied Marxism, he's got this whole concept called alienation. And the idea is like you become alienated from, your labor because, it's abstracted and you don't see the product of it. And, that balloons out to your feelings to the greater society overall. And, I would say but the context of our modern world, of modern neoliberal capitalism, has alienated us more than ever before. And I have so many friends, including myself, that deal with depression and suicidal thoughts. And, all I really say, those of you out there, you wrestle with these feelings yourself, talk to a friend. Do what you need to do to feel better. And if all else fails, remember, if you stay alive for no other reason, stay alive out of spite. Because frankly, that's what the fascists want. Fascists would like to just drop dead, but stick around, stay alive despite them.
Nihilism will only get you so far, and it's not always a healthy thing. Let's keep it real, man. You see what outright nihilism gets you into. You start scrolling down the interwebs of incels.
I would argue even our generation was pretty nihilistic until, and I don't want to give this much credit to Bernie Sanders, but I think that particular year really brought things into focus for a lot of people and was able to channel a lot of energy, some for the good, some for the bad. A lot of people our age ended up, being Trumpsters, but people did start to care a little bit more, whether for good or ill. Sorry, go ahead, Lawrence.
No, I mean it's a thing that is just that we in our lifetime we spend a lot of time we talk about the horrible things that happen in the world all the time, and we talk about the reality of our existence and the reality of what's going on around us. Some things that we can control and some things we can't. And I can't speak on the mental health of the person that did what they did. I can't speak on what people are thinking or not, you know. But having that conversation with somebody who truly cares is always a good way to not sink so low is to not fall so deep in a sunken place. You know what I'm saying? We have to find hope and understand that we have to find hope and find a way to keep moving forward. I don't know what was going on with that person, but or their families, but the community needs to do better. We have to do better as a community to make sure that we are reaching out to everyone, because it was a tragedy, man. That's basically what this is. It's a tragedy.
Yeah, and like the guy himself, in addition to working at Biomat, he's also he spent a lot of years of his life working for Life EMS and being a on-call firefighter out in Parchment. So yeah, we really lost an important member of our community, and again, also, I'd be remiss in saying this suicide by cop it's dangerous. It is.
It's real.
It's real. It is very real. And I would say it speaks volumes on a number of issues that we talk about often in this show that really intersect. And I don't want to sound like the police officer who got shot. I don't want to dismiss that person. That is also, tragic in its own way. And yet, yes, I get, we have our overall critiques of the police, of course, on this show, and policing as an American institution. But, it is, it's just tragic. I'm sorry. I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that. But.
Nah, it's fine, man. Just last thing. I'm pray for our city, man. Pray for our people. You know what I'm saying? Pray for the city and pray for our people, man. It's a crazy situation, and we have to do better. Make sure that people understand. Please call suicide hotline if you think people are tripping. Maybe there's been multiple stories, and there was a viral video of a Kalamazoo man who had a gun on I think it was on Drake Road or somewhere near, I think it was on the south side near Lori Norrick's, who had a long rifle, and the cops talked him down. They talked him down for 15 minutes. Some crazy right-wing white dude who was like, this is my right. And it's the cops talked him down. They talked him down and did not shoot anybody. Now I understand that this man was in a building full of people, and he was in a building full of people, so it's a different situation, but I don't know, man.
It's hard to know, obviously we weren't there, and, I don't know if he even gave them time to try to talk him down, but, those are good questions to ask, well, it's kind of we were talking about Sterling Brown a couple weeks ago, and they were. It was a situation not similar, but I believe was it the prosecutor? No, the defendant. I'm sorry. The attorney defending the actions of the police department tried to paint Sterling Brown's actions as basically in that milieu, he wanted to kill himself and wanted the police to do it for him.
Yeah, and that was completely and utterly garbage, because they found that on his dead body after they shot him 6 times, and they waited 6 minutes to even approach him. So all that information came out afterwards. Nah, dog, that's different from the situation that we have here. But nah, dog, I cannot I cannot deal with like that case in particular in California was completely different. That was garbage. This situation, I don't know. I don't have enough more information on this situation to speak on that.
And I'm sure more information will be coming out in the next few days. But for the time being, condolences to the family. And
if the news come out and they start trying to smear him, like if the news comes out from Channel 3 and others trying to character assassinate him like they've tried to do with other people, then we are going to have a lot to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So going forward, what else did we really want to hit on? I know that did we already drag Tucker Carlson?
We have not dragged Tucker Carlson yet.
I know you wanted to do
that.
So.
I do want to drag Tucker Carlson, but there's also some other things I want to talk about. Democracy Now! Was talking about some stuff that we're probably going to end up talking about next week because I need to read the study before I speak on it. Tucker Carlson is in hot water because of some comments that he's been saying. And I'm sitting here, we've been sitting here saying it's about time because he spews white supremacist rhetoric on his show on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. like it's upsetting because people are acting outraged now because he has a nuanced way of spinning racist, bigoted statements.
One of the things that kind of surprised me about it was I've had this conception of Tucker Carlson as somebody who's become like more overtly racist and parroting white supremacist talking points, almost kind of like following his audience, especially post-Trump, but especially like these recordings that were many years ago. This is at a time when he still had that clean-cut image of being like, well, I'm just like the conservative with the bow tie on Crossfire who argues with who's that other guy, the Bill Clinton dude. Anyway, but no, he's been garbage for a while.
Here's the thing.
Unveils.
If you go back and you listen to what Ronald Reagan said, Ronald Reagan's number 2 person was saying, they said in the recording, at some point in time you couldn't say the N-word because that became unacceptable. So we started going from N-word to states' rights. And we started going from states' rights to, let's raise taxes. If we raise taxes, it will help out everyone, especially white folks, and it will hurt people who are disenfranchised, which is black folks who we don't like anyway. That type of ideology and logic is what the Confederates would use when they talked about states' rights. What's my states' rights? My states' rights was to own black folks. It's the same type of philosophy. Tucker Carlson embodies that type of philosophy. I'm not gonna say the N-word. I'm not gonna say a word that's a slur for gay folks. No, but I'm going to insinuate with this coded language so that people understand that that's what I'm talking about. So when Media Matters does what Media Matters does, and they speak truth to power, and they talk about truth, and they chin check those who are in the mainstream media. They chin check people who are in media. You see, Tucker Carlson and others now get upset. Why? Because they're not used to being challenged. These are rich, powerful people who are not used to being challenged. And when Media Matters does their job, they are challenging those who are not used to it. And you see Tucker flipping out on it. And the stuff that he said was disgusting. He called people Iraqis from overseas, or I think it was either Iraq or Afghanistan. He was calling them monkeys and saying that the best thing that they need to do is to obey. He was calling women, I can't say the word that he was saying, but it's the same thing that Samantha Bee said about Ivanka Trump, and he was saying it about women. he said a bunch of stuff that is just completely and utterly garbage. And instead of saying, yo, this is not me anymore, y'all. If y'all, I apologize for this. He's doubled down on it. He literally went on Fox News and said, why is Media Matters tax exempt? Maybe someone who's watching this show should look into that. He said that because he knows Trump watches the news. He said that so he could say, yo, why don't you attack this political opponent of mine who's attacking me? Mm-hmm. He's a garbage person. And I actually was giving Tucker Carlson, like, when he had his debate with Jen Huger at Politicon, I was like, all right, maybe he's more human than I thought. Maybe he's a little bit more human than the other right-wing troglodytes. Nope. I cannot give him that credit. He is just as much of a troglodyte as the rest of them.
Yeah, and it is disappointing because, like, we've actually pointed out on the show, occasionally he will say these things that make a lot of sense. He did a report on our foreign policy, or interventionist foreign policy, a few months ago that we highlighted on the show.
He had Tulsi Gabbard on the show, and they talked about foreign policy, and it was an actual substantive conversation. Like Tucker Carlson had Dave Rubin on the show to explain why he's not going to apologize for the garbage things that he said. And if you don't know who Dave Rubin is also another garbage person who used to be on the left, who used to be a progressive, but now he's getting paid by the Koch brothers and others to run his show. And he's a gay man that praised Nicolas Maduro. Not Maduro. It's not
Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah, Jair Bolsonaro. He's a gay man that went to I forgot where Bolsonaro is it Philippines or
you mean Brazil?
No.
The president of the Philippines is Rodrigo Duterte, who is also a
but that's the thing. I think he went over. I forgot where he went to, but Dave Rubin did a commercial for a government to praise a president that is trying to execute gay people. That is not a joke. That is not a punchline. Because when he
what's this Eastern Europe, Chechnya?
Yeah, I think it was. But that was my thing. Tucker Carlson invited Dave Rubin on his show to talk about free speech. And that's the thing that pissed me off, because I'm sitting here like, Dave Rubin literally will do anything for money. He went to an anti-gay country that wants to execute gay people and praised them. He praised that government power, and now he is on Fox News trying to defend Tucker Carlson for saying the horrible things that he's done. Like, dog. Like, okay, I'll give you a prime example of how Tucker Carlson is garbage. An anti-Semitic trope is saying that Israelis are puppet masters, right? He talked about David Spelter, who's on CNN, and he was saying David Spelter is a puppet master of Zuckerberg, the Zuckerberg who's a Jewish billionaire, and they made a graphic of Stelter being a puppet, being a puppet master. That's anti-Semitic. That's some real, and that's some 1930s and 40s anti-Semitism stuff that Fox News did, and they aired on TV. Yet he went after Ilhan Omar about saying it's all about the Benjamins being anti-Semitic. That's how you know Tucker Carlson's garbage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, so many of the people on the right are just bad faith actors, but yeah, unfortunately, it's not surprising. But I think it really does go to show there is a hypocrisy of these right wing figures when they try to call out people.
It was Jeff Zucker. It was Jeff Zucker that he did the puppet thing too. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do have to go. There's more stuff that I do want to talk about, but I do actually got to leave, though.
All right. Well, Lawrence, thank you once again for coming on the show and spitting those hot truths. We'll be back next week, I believe. So for now, I think let's go ahead and take a little break. When we come back, we're actually going to present an interview that one of our co-hosts, Ms. Nora Getz, conducted with some organizers in Chicago following the recent local elections that they had. So keep it dial locked. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Hi, this is Fred Snyder of the B-52s and the Superions, who were formerly the Del Morons. And every time I'm in Kalamazoo, I tune into WIDR.
Voting is important. From deciding Kalamazoo's best drunk food to picking the fan favorite for Wider's Battle of the Bands, voting allows people to voice their opinions and change their world. To vote for offices such as mayors, senators, and the president takes a little more than a link to a Google Forms survey. Before you vote, you have to register. This can be done in person, by mail, and, in many states, online. For more information, you can point your favorite web browser to vote.gov.
Wider's 2019 Battle of the Bands is supported by Rupert's Brewhouse. Rupert's is located on 773 West Michigan Avenue in Kalamazoo. Rupert's offers daily specials on food and drink as well as live entertainment weekly. To find out more information, you can visit rupertsbrewhouse.com or give them a call at 269-337-9911.
Welcome back, listeners. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. We are going to close out today's show. This is an interview that our co-host Nora Getz did on March 2nd, and it is with some Chicago organizers. They'll be discussing not only organizing in Chicago, but also their response to the results of the recent election. So kick back and enjoy. This is going to be, again, Nora Getz and her interview about the recent Chicago elections.
The Hoodrat Strategist radio program. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nora Getz, here with Jenji.
Hi, everyone.
So Jenji is a resident from Chicago, and she's here to talk about the recent election. So I guess what do you say were your first reactions from last week's vote?
My first reaction, honestly, was to be a little bit worried because the way it's supposed to work, of course, there are 14 candidates, and the top two vote getters typically go to a runoff. That happened last time, too, with Rahm Emanuel and Chuy Garcia. But there was some worry. Bill Daley came in third, and I guess he was within 1% of
getting to the runoff.
Well, so it was Toni Preckwinkle got 16% of the vote, and Lori Lightfoot got 17.5%. And so Daley was almost 15%. And I heard some people saying that he might sue to try to get into the runoff on the grounds that he was within 1% of the second person, he was within 5% of the top person. I don't know how all the laws work there, but I was really worried about that, because then if it was a three-way runoff, basically the progressive vote would have been split between Preckwinkle and Lightfoot, and then there's a chance we get another frickin' Daley. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, you're not. There's some things you can't say on the radio, but don't worry about frickin'. So,
okay,
yeah, for context, like the Daley family has run that city for like decades and decades, and it would probably be more of the same, honestly, if you were to be elected. But like, if you look at God, I keep on mixing their names up. If you look up Lightfoot's record, she's not much better at with her career prosecutor type stuff. Can you speak much to that?
I'm not terribly in-depth familiar with all the ins and outs of it, but what I can tell you is that she was the head of what was supposed to be the Civilian Oversight Board. That this was Chicago's answer to all the allegations of police brutality, wrongful arrests, targeted prosecutions, killings, etc. was, oh, well, we're going to have this Civilian Oversight Board of city officials that will adjudicate whether police should stay on the job in these situations. And it was sort of, in my opinion, this intermediary step that the establishment took to say, okay, well, we'll throw people a bone, but we'll have like an independent body to adjudicate whether or not these people should keep their jobs without bringing ever criminal charges against them. Sounded okay, I guess, in theory, better than nothing. In practice, they have never done anything. They pretty much never find police guilty of any wrongdoing, and it's just been another vessel through which the city finds ways to excuse that wrongdoing, and Lori Lightfoot was a part of that. In terms of her record as a prosecutor, I would say it's fair to say a lot of the criticism there has been similar to the criticism of Kamala Harris in the national field. My own attitude is, in this society, in the white supremacist patriarchal system we operate under, I'm not going to find fault with any woman of color just for trying to eke out a status and operate within that system. So I'm not one of the people that thinks the fact that she was a prosecutor automatically means she's disqualified. I can't vote for her. She was, though, at a law firm that basically represented and defended police that had killed unarmed people, including Rakia Boyd, who was a young woman I had the opportunity to meet a couple members of her family at one point, and it's just, I can't reconcile, I was involved in some of that activism back following the Ferguson uprising, and when sort of the Black Lives Matter movement was at its zenith, doing some local organizing in Chicago, and then a little bit national in some other places. And so for me, Lori Lightfoot's record, her platform, I should say, in theory, sounded among the most progressive, and she was, a lot of people thought she was the big winner of the debates. She performed very well in the debates, but that I just can't reconcile that track record with sort of the values and the issues that I think are most important, and the urgency of ending the cycle of violence and criminalization, and Chicago being one of the most segregated cities in America, honestly, because of that in large part. And I don't think you get to a structural solution to those inequities in this small-scale piecemeal way without real accountability and oversight. So that's what led me ultimately to cast a vote for Preckwinkle.
Okay. What do you like and dislike about Preckwinkle in comparison, would you say?
So the criticism of her, so there is a big issue about whether or not to build this new police academy and a lot of the more establishment candidates were for that, they said, oh, well, increased training will make things better in terms of all these issues and wrongful use of force, etc. And I just think if that was the answer, it would have happened already. There are some people that had the attitude that casting a vote for her was like casting a vote for Hillary Clinton, that she was this establishment figure who had too many ties to like the Daily Machine and the Emmanuel Machine.
Didn't she work with the DNC before?
I believe so, yes. And so my thinking, honestly, was her platform is still fairly progressive, and again, I'm not necessarily going to hold it against her that she has a power base in, it's funny, if you look, I was just looking at the precinct map, and it is revealing that Lori Lightfoot, who's also queer, was carried a lot of the north side precincts, which are
some of those the white gay neighborhoods.
Yes, tends to be where a lot of the white queer population lives, along the lake on the north side, and she won big there. But also, again, like very segregated, and I could get into a lot of stories about like what that looks with white queer folk on the north side not always being there or being welcoming in the way they should be to queer people of color from the south side and the west. And but I thought it was revealing. She won big there, and then Preckwinkle won the Loop, like downtown, actually, those precincts. Surprisingly, Daley didn't. He won, though, in sort of the straight north side. I just, my attitude was, okay, I realize she's not the most progressive candidate, but I wanted to learn the lessons of 2016, and frankly, she is the most progressive candidate that has a record, that is someone that I believe is capable of following through on some of these priorities, even if it's not everything I would like to see. So it was a little bit pragmatic, but still a little bit idealistic, and I like to think it's not one or the other. I like to think it's a balancing act. So
because like with all the people that were in there, you kind of do have to like do a little calculus to see who's actually going to make it to the runoff too. And like, although I still I know Amara was probably the most progressive candidate in the race, and I might have voted for her, but like at the same time, I don't know if I can really say that, like trying to, if I like actually living somewhere and trying to do that sort of calculus.
And see, here was the thing with me, with Amara and Yaya, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It was, I did most of this by reading, so I'm not mispronouncing her name. There was a great voter guide I looked at too, by two queer women whose names are escaping me, called Girl, I Guess. It was like a breakdown of each race, including all 50 alderman races.
Oh, wow.
That was very useful. And they recommended voting for Amara. My thing was, she has the most progressive platform.
She's got an amazing platform.
So did Barack Obama. And, I'm going to throw shade here. I just think I campaigned for Obama when he first ran, and he was a huge disappointment to me. And he was someone that talked a big game, had the right ideas, didn't have the proven track record, and ultimately proved to be someone that bowed to pressure too easily, whether it was political pressure, whether it was financial interests, and whether or not his heart was in the right place. His actions didn't always reflect that. He didn't always seem like he had the stomach for a fight, especially, like we saw that early, for example, when it came to single payer, or even not even willing to advocate a public option, saying
she promised for during the campaign,
saying Joe Lieberman was his mentor in the Senate. That should have been a red flag. And just basically not following through on a lot of his promises, not even being willing to fight for them. The judicial appointments that he allowed the Republicans to obstruct on for 4 years in some cases for some of these federal seats that now Trump is getting to fill, which is
it's
a disaster.
The most egregious thing I think you've done. Going back to to Amara.
Sorry, so the reason I brought that up is just because when someone doesn't have a track record of like proven action results to go on, I'm going to go with my gut. And I know that sounds silly, just, vote on the facts, but if there's not data available of like, have you achieved these priorities that you espouse? I'm going to allow myself to say all I have is to try to judge you as a person. I'm going to be a little more cautious about that now. And there were some, I wouldn't even call them scandals. There were some piddling things like, okay, she got an endorsement from Kanye West. And how does that, and how did she react to that? And it's like, okay, Kanye is a tool, who cares? But she was just like...
Was that when he was off his, or on his meds? I gotta...
Flip a coin. I don't know. But it was just a function of, like, just say, it's Kanye, who cares?
Yeah.
If you endorse me or not, that's not who I'm running for.
I will say, it looks like when she got an endorsement from Chance the Rapper, it looks like I was actually helping her for a bit.
But my point is that's something that should have been a non-issue, that a strong candidate would just like flick off their shoulder, and either way, and like just, you know, make a statement, whatever, it's not important, move on. She just always seemed to me to be blowing in the wind and trying to have both sides of things, including things that are ultimately not consequential. And that reminded me too much of Obama, that desire to be liked by everyone taking precedence, that desire to have everyone's approval and be all things to all people. And then the other thing, the one thing I will call a scandal, was that she refused to release her tax returns.
Oh.
And if we're going to say that it's suspect that Donald Trump won't do that, and that should be a legal requirement for candidates for national office, then I think we need to be consistent there too. So it's not that I think that that her tax returns would reveal anything as nefarious as Donald Trump's might. But again, it's just if you're going to tell me what I have to go on is character and what she says, well, what she says gives me worries for those reasons. So I voted for what a lot of people would say was like the third most progressive or the establishment progressive candidate.
Right.
So be it, because Lori Lightfoot, again, just there's some things that take primacy that has to be like, this is a deal breaker. And with Amara, it was just, I don't have enough to be certain. So I'm going to go with what is the most progressive candidate I can find, where I feel some sense of surety that this person is competent, they're connected, and they will, if they're not going to be perfect and keep all their promises, at least they'll make some of them happen. I hope. And that's all we can do. But in this era where of Trumpism, like, we can't enable fascism by letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, or saying, oh, I demand everything at once. And so I'm trying to carry that with me in my mind and say I don't have to give up my ideals to temper them with the context that we live in.
Okay. There was, of course, like, you know, the mayoral race that got the most attention, but like there's still plenty of ultramanic races. Do you have much to say about those?
So of course there's 50 aldermen, and I'm not familiar with most of those races.
Do you think there's enough that will make it to the runoff, at least, that are against the Cop Academy?
I was looking at the results for this. Looks like about 15 of them are heading to a runoff out of the 50, which is a decent number.
That might be just enough if they all make it.
And I do not know how many of them are for or against the police academy or reforming the oversight commission. But I know that in my own ward, again, this is really awkward. So the Challenger, I live in the first ward, which is near West Side. I have lived there before, and a lot of Hispanic and Latinx residents who have been hit really hard by development and gentrification. And I've watched it happen, just these arbitrary rent hikes, non-renewal of leases, businesses being driven out, small businesses, family businesses being driven out so that they can be replaced by chains and retail outlets, and just a lot of really exploitive property owners and developers. And so there was actually a rent control measure on the ballot in parts of the first ward and some other parts of the city. The way the ballot measures work is really bizarre because they're non-binding. Unlike Michigan, they don't actually do anything other than voice public approval. But it's at least serves as a mandate, but you're only allowed to vote on them in the precincts that would be affected by them, basically. And so I guess where I was in the first ward wasn't included in that, but it did pass overwhelmingly. So
does this what would it take to make a rent control lifting the ban be binding in this case?
It would require action by, I believe, both the city and the state. Let me double check.
Oh wow, that's really excessive because usually when you when you would pass a ballot initiative on a state level, like that'd just be like the law after you give it a couple of months.
Right, and it doesn't matter if it's local, if it's citywide, or if it's like statewide in Illinois. The ballot measures are just a poll. They actually have no legislative weight.
Wow.
But they do still make a difference sometimes. So yeah, the rent control referendum. Yeah, should the state of Illinois lift the ban on rent control to address rising rents, unjust evictions, and gentrification in our community? So that would have to happen in the state legislature.
Wow.
Just like there was another referendum. It was the second or third one about it was about tax revenue from marijuana sales if it becomes legalized, and it's decriminalized in Chicago and Illinois both now. But there was a citywide referendum a few years ago about full legalization, and then there's been a couple about the use of the revenue that all passed overwhelmingly. So the state legislature is likely to take action on that next year. So that. I don't mean to say they don't make a difference. They do, but they have no binding power on their own. But as far as the first ward, that was incredibly awkward for me because there was a challenger named LaSpada, and he seemed like overwhelmingly the right choice. And then very shortly, like a couple weeks before the election, we find out that he had taken a picture that was being criticized as racist, and this is especially awkward for me because I'm from Virginia.
Oh boy.
I'm from Virginia, first 25 years of my life, so you can find my blackface pictures on Instagram. I thought I'd get out ahead of it. I don't even have an Instagram, unfortunately. Although I could do a me and Michael Jackson myself when I was 6. But I have to ask though, if it's like 1991, Michael, does that still count as blackface?
Oh my God.
I apologize. I denounce or reject myself. But no. So with the legacy of having come from the capital of the Confederacy and the profound embarrassment of the top 3 elected officials in my state, all Democrats, having the two white ones having been found to have engaged in blackface, minstrelsy, and the other one credibly accused of sexual assault. Profound freaking embarrassment. And it really, I sat there staring at the screen for a long time thinking about whether or not I could pull the trigger for LaSpada because of that. And as a white Virginian, whatever practical assessment there is, do I even have the moral prerogative to be able to cast a vote for this guy? And I ultimately did, partly for the reasons we talked about, and partly because the picture was just so freaking weird. So what happened was he says it was his bachelor party. For his bachelor party, for whatever reason, he decided to dress up as a banana. So he was wearing a giant banana suit, and his friends were wearing monkey masks, which already I don't quite understand the imagery there.
His friends are going to eat him before he gets married?
Seems a little homoerotic, but fine. But the thing is, these were mostly white dudes.
Yeah.
And there was a picture that they dug up of him and him in the banana, his friends in monkey masks. They're posing on the street on the sidewalk in daylight with a bunch of black teens, and they were not wearing monkey masks, but it looked really bad. And his response, he claims we were walking around, my friends and I, on the way to wherever venue we were going, and these kids saw us and came up to us and they asked us to take a picture, and we said yes. So I don't know what to make of that, if it's true, but
crazy things do happen at bachelor parties, but that is also kind of suspect.
It does seem like even if that was the case, there's some judgment that should have been exercised there, and then it's maybe I didn't think about it in that light at the time. Well, yeah, that's the problem.
Right.
That's what it means to be white, is the luxury of not having to think about it. When other people, it's very serious consequences, and we have to think about.
That's we mentioned this earlier. Like that's also kind of like the character of like Northern and especially like Midwestern racism, because like it's often done in like just not really as usually in an intentional way, but like in a sort of an offbeat or like a weird sort of
and subtle, and that's part of what makes it, because like where I grew up, the racism was very overt, and I've even like I remember being an undergrad and talking to like people of color that we're in Richmond, and we're talking about like if we're from rural areas, is it better or worse here? And them telling me, well, you know, at least in the country you knew where you stood, and you knew exactly who you had to watch out for. And sometimes in the city and supposedly more liberal areas, you can't quite tell. Yeah, so that was hard. But again, it just came down to he gave an apology that was totally insufficient, and I agree that it was insufficient. But is it on the same level as what Governor Northam did? I don't know. I'm not fit or qualified to answer that question. I do believe this guy will make a positive difference for the predominantly brown residents of the First Ward that are being forced out of their livelihoods and exploited and dicked over right now. And so that's what I based my vote on, with some trepidation. And all I can say is, I hope my black friends would forgive me for that. But if they think that was something that was disqualifying, I totally understand that, and I don't know what else I could have done other than refrain from voting. But that didn't seem, let me look at the total. So
did he make it to the runoff?
There's no runoff. So the incumbent was Joe Moreno, and he got 4,602 votes. LaSpeda got 7,281 votes. Okay. So, I mean, that's why also it's so important to vote in these local elections. Yeah. Because everyone says, oh, your vote doesn't matter. And I understand how people feel that way at the national level. It's still not true, but I understand how people feel that way at the national level. In primaries, though, and in local elections, the margins are so small. The margins can be so small, and you make such a big difference in the immediate implementation of policy at the level that most directly affects people's lives. Yeah. And you got to do it, and you got to do it. So we have a little bit more time here. Yeah. What do you I guess a quick question, since you're from Virginia, what do you think is going to happen as a result of the political crisis? Because it doesn't look like those people are stepping down, at least not as quickly as they should. And I did hear from one, I guess, black commentator that was saying that because Ralph Northam's so guilty, he's going to continually try to overcompensate to actually try to pass more policies to help communities. So do you think that's a thing? I saw actually a really funny segment where Trevor Noah on the Daily Show. Yes, I think it's the one. And it turns out there are poll numbers that are bearing that out, in terms of a majority of black Virginians are at this point against him resigning. But there was this really problematic piece on Politico, which that's a waste of words to say. Yeah, of course. These center-right publications, they're looking at that and saying, oh, see, well, this is a non-issue because 60% of black Virginians say he should stay. What they're missing is that for marginalized people, for communities of color, for queer people, it's realpolitik is just politic. It's always been difficult choices between things that suck. Yes. For black people in this country and other groups as well. And so I think that's missing they're not saying it's fine, no big deal. The majority that are saying that in the context of we live in a state that has a very troubled history and present, I would argue, to say the least. We have issues that need to be addressed, and we have a guy here that has reason to feel the pressure to do that, and also the guy after him credibly accused of sexual assault, and the guy after him, also blackface, the guy after him, a Republican who is going to be incredibly regressive and do any attempt at healthcare, criminal justice reform, etc., if he were to be governor. So that's missing the context of they're making a political calculation in that climate. That does not mean that they don't think it's racist or unacceptable. As far as what happens, I will say I had a thought along the same line of what Trevor Noah said. As a white person, I don't think it's my place to express that thought. It's not, the weight of it isn't on me, but I'm not the one that has to live with the knowledge that, there's a governor that thinks of me this way or views my life as like a costume. That being said, Virginia is unique among the 50 states of the Union in that it has a one-term limit on governors for life, which is really interesting.
He won't be around for very long no matter what.
Right. He cannot run for re-election. He cannot run for a second term.
I certainly doubt any of the officials immediately below him would.
Right. So our elections in Virginia are the year after presidential elections. So he's at this point, over a year into his term. He has a few years left to go, and then he's gone at any rate. So I think maybe part of that realpolitik calculation that Black Virginians are doing is also this guy's not going to hang around. And part of the advantage, the rationale for the one-term limit is always people will get elected and do the stuff they say they're going to do because there's no incentive for them not to, compared to our national politics where people get elected and then it becomes immediately about the re-election before they've even been in office for a year. They're already raising money.
We're already talking about 2020.
Right. So we don't have that with the governor.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and leave the interview there. I want to thank y'all for tuning in to tonight's episode. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. A few shout-outs, events coming up later this week. There's actually only one really in the social justice wheelhouse. On March 18th, that's next Monday, DSA, the Southwest Michigan Democratic Socialists of America, are going to be hosting a Medicare for All working group meeting. Basically, they're going to be meeting at 7 o'clock over at the Vine Neighborhood Association, and they're going to be talking about their plans and strategies to canvass and promote Medicare for All. So with that, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. You can find our episodes online at the Hoodrat Strategist YouTube channel, and please also like our page on Facebook. Until next week, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.